This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
We're grateful to have you here with us on a show that promises to be informative and entertaining. Yeah, that's right, informative and entertaining. In just a second, we're going to check in with economist Todd Hirsch. He's recognized and renowned nationwide, having been for many, many years the chief economist at ATB Financial. He's now a big deal on the lecture circuit. He's an author. He helps people understand the economics of policy, the real-life ramifications of political policy. Plus, he's got a compelling argument on why Canada is the 51st state would be the biggest state. Can you hear it in Donald Trump's voice, Johnny? It's the big state. It's huge, the biggest state. Huge. It's a huge state. What would the implications be? Todd's laid it all out in a LinkedIn post. We said you got to come on the show and talk about it. Plus, Mark Carney spotted yesterday, allegedly wearing $2,000 shoes. Woo. Although I've seen people fact-checking Pierre Poilievre's tweet. I don't want to get too into it right now. They're saying these are not the same boots. These are not the same shoes. Okay. But Pierre Poilievre saying Mark Carney's out there playing road hockey wearing $2,000 shoes. He's just like Justin. We're going to have some fun with this today, but also sink our teeth in a little bit. Get a little bit more serious. The hypocrisy of the comment, but bigger picture, why it's actually quite discouraging as a harbinger of maybe what's to come in the next federal election. We're going to take a look at some new polling as well. Looks like we've got a real horse race, which I don't know that anybody was predicting 3 months ago. Maybe the host of this show will be eating his words. We shall see what is in store. I want to let you know before we get to Todd that this episode is happening with the incredible support of Alberta's top online real estate school. That's Rello, where better real estate training starts. Real estate learning online at rello.ca for the bold and ambitious. No matter where you are in your career, they'll help you find the next level. If you're just out of high school, if you've been out of university for a while, maybe you've been stuck in, let's be honest, a dead-end job for years and you're feeling compelled to make a move, unlimited earning potential, helping people every day, all that stuff appeals. Well, the team at Rello is going to get you all set up, set to write the exam, set to get licensed, and set to kick off your career on the right foot. You might as well get started saving a couple $100 right now as well with the promo code Ryan100, all one word, at rello.ca. That'll knock $100 off both the residential and the commercial real estate bundles. When you're getting signed up at rello.ca, make sure you remember the promo code Ryan100. Get your career started in real estate today. Cactus Sheriff says Pierre Poilievre got called out for wearing an $1,800 coat in the Post where he was calling out Mark Carney for his shoes. We'll get into this. It's a Canada Goose coat, although I did have a theory I shared on X, on Twitter last night. I said, it's possible that Pierre Poilievre paid much less for his parka if it's a knockoff from China. Uh-oh. If he wants to come clean with Canadians, I know people that have Canada Goose parkas for $75, but they've bought them illicitly as brand knockoffs. More on the story that was raising eyebrows across the country. Mark Carney's shoes a little later on in the episode, but first let's get serious here. Let's talk finances. Let's talk trade. Let's talk Canada's economics. And the bottom line is Donald Trump doubles down, makes good on his promise to impose 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Forget about the 1 month pause. That's not a thing. Steel and aluminum will feel the pinch almost immediately, so announced the president on his way to the Super Bowl on Sunday. We talked about it, the impact on the agriculture industry with YouTuber Quick Dick McDick yesterday. Since that conversation, Donald Trump now saying he plans to tariff automobiles made in Canada between 50 and 100%. Says that Canadians have been taking advantage of their trading partners. Says he wants to see those vehicles manufactured in Detroit. So what does this mean for your family? Todd Hirsch is an economist, a speaker, the author of 4 books, best known in our home province of Alberta for having been the chief economist at ATB Financial for more than 15 years. He's worked at the Bank of Canada. He's taught economics at both the University of Calgary and the University of Alberta. And these days, he's zigzagging all over North America, delivering keynote presentations on adapting to economic disruption. It's great to see your face, Todd. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for having me.
Oh
Great to
no,
be here.
a lot of people are going to hear this on the podcast, but so for their benefit, I want to get into what you have behind you right now. I'm assuming you didn't set that up in the context of Mark Carney, but it looks to me like you've got a wall full of beautiful kicks behind you. What are we looking at?
Well, my office is gradually being turned into a shoe museum. It is true. And I hope nobody does any pricing on them, although I'm not an elected official, so it's really none of their business. But we do kind of like displaying the shoes on the wall.
Well, they're beautiful, and I'm not enough of a shoe expert to be able to pick out the brands and the models. I mean, shoes are like timepieces, like watches. Those who know. But I'm guessing. I think I see some Jordan 1s in there. I see some pretty nice kicks. I'm guessing that there are shoes in there that would exceed the value of a Valentine's Day dinner. Hey, just candidly, Todd, Mark Carney's not an elected official either, but he wants to be one. He wants to be prime minister. What's your take on Pierre Poilievre? Johnny, maybe we can call up the post and show it. But Pierre Poilievre calling out Mark Carney says he's wearing $2,000 shoes. He's just like Justin.
Well, I mean, his base is going to love this, but I just think it's a real distraction. It's a bit immature to me. Attack him on his policy. That's what I think Canadians want to hear. Don't attack him on his shoes. That's his business. If he's made money and he wants to buy a nice pair of shoes, what business is that of ours? I just think it is such a petty thing to go after. I know if Pierre was here, he would say, well, this, goes to the character of the man and blah, blah, blah. I'd rather him focus on what is Mark Carney's policies, attack the policies if you want, and convince us that your policies to govern this country are better. I'm not interested in the price of Mark Carney's shoes, or for that matter, the price of his Canada Goose jacket. That's his business.
Yeah, it's his business. And I saw a post here that I appreciated from Guy Felicella. He's been a guest on this show before. And Guy says, hey, I have no beef with Canadians buying the best and the warmest winter gear that we can afford. But if you're walking around in a $1,600 parka, should you really be mocking your rival for what you think are pricey shoes? I think it's a fair, there's tit for tat on that. I'd prefer that we just pretend like the folks that are campaigning on a very short list to run the country are folks that have accomplished a couple of things in their personal lives. That's going to come under the microscope next federal election. Who has accomplished what outside of politics? And I'd prefer that we focus on the meat of the matter. I don't actually know that the base is going to love this. I pointed out yesterday in a tweet, I can name a dozen, I won't do this, but I can name a dozen conservatives off the top of my head that I personally know and call friends that have $10,000+ watches. I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not they could be public servants, with whether or not they can relate to their fellow human beings. It's a personal matter.
Yeah. I'm assuming, Mark Carney's not an elected official, but, taxpayers didn't pay for those boots. So what business is it of ours, how much he pays for his boots?
Todd, this Trump thing. So yesterday, we're talking to Quick Dick McDick. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a farmer out of Saskatchewan. He's a YouTuber with a huge following. He's down at a farm equipment show in Louisville, Kentucky. So he's got a really interesting perspective. He's talking to American ag producers, and they're all talking about how costs are going to go up. Whether that's, for farm equipment that's being manufactured in Canada and shipped down, whether that's for the cost of inputs like actual seed, fertilizer that's going across the border. Everybody has their own interpretation of the true cost of tariffs. But you're an expert. I mean, you're an expert in counseling people through navigating economic disruption. How big of a deal, we're just talking steel and aluminum now, we'll broaden our conversation, but how big of a deal are these 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum?
Well, especially for those regions of the country that produce the steel and aluminum, this is massive, and most of the, especially aluminum, comes out of Quebec. Steel, a little more broadly, Ontario and Quebec. It's not going to hit Alberta quite as much, the tariffs just on the steel and aluminum, but it will be felt in those communities where we do produce it. So, a 25% tariff is massive. Leading up to the election in the US, they were talking about a 10% tariff. That was, sort of shocking enough. 25, and most of your listeners, and this has been talked about a lot, going back to 2018, Trump imposed, the same tariff on steel and aluminum from Canada. It didn't stay in place very long. I think it was less than a year before everyone realized this was a really bad idea. But now he's doing it again. It's almost like, that person that can't remember a lesson learned. So this defies all logic, and it's confounding economists and probably most policy people on both sides of the border why this is even happening.
There'll probably be some people that go, well, I mean, there's actually a talk show moment. Mark Carney did an interview with CTV Atlantic where he says to the host, Todd Hirsch, he says, well, when's the last time you bought steel? And everybody's kind of spinning that clip as a way of Mark Carney appearing as though he's out of touch with the average Canadian, like he doesn't understand the impact. There probably will be people, though, saying, well, steel and aluminum, I mean, that's not really anything. I'm not buying a garden shed anytime soon. I'm not manufacturing, scaffolding. It's not something that's going to impact me personally. Why does it matter to everybody? Or does it?
Well, I mean, if you think about how much in everyday products steel and aluminum comes into play, you buy a can of juice or a can of pop in an aluminum can. We don't think about, I'm buying aluminum. Well, you actually are. And that it certainly will impact the price of, canned beverages, beer, juice, pop, all the things that are in aluminum cans. How much steel is in everything. We might not be buying a car today or a garden shed, but probably over the course of 2025, you're going to be purchasing something or a component of something that has steel in it. So these things really do trickle down into consumer goods in bigger ways than we see it. I think people see on the news the images of, those giant rolls of cold steel in the plant, and people, they feel a bit detached from that. Who's ever going to be buying a giant roll of steel like that? But it's the consumer products it's going to trickle into, and probably sooner than later.
I'm trying to sort of sort through and make sense of this threat to impose 50 to 100% tariffs on cars manufactured in Canada. Now, there's not a ton of cars that are manufactured in Canada. I'm referencing a website, surex.com here. So this is just for folks for reference. In past, I'm not sure if this is current as of 2025, but Chrysler, Dodge, Ford, Toyota, Lexus, Honda have all manufactured cars in Canada, including some of the minivans, including some of the light SUVs like the RAV4, the CRV, that type of thing. But Canada, not necessarily known as an auto manufacturer, a lot of auto parts. But how big of a deal could this be for the automotive industry? This is the type of thing I would imagine that is front and center, right in the middle of Doug Ford's desk, as an example.
Yeah, and also Michigan. I guess the question for me is, and I don't know the details, is that 50 to 100% tariff on finished automobiles only, or is it on all of the parts that go into the whole process? If it's on the parts, this is an absolute disaster, not just for Canada, but for North America's auto industry. And I'm sure you've had lots of other guests, and this has been talked about a lot. It is unequivocally bad for the North American auto industry, because those parts and finished products cross the border. I think they estimate, up to 8 or 9 times by the time you finally, roll it out of the dealership in your hometown. So much trade in autos and auto parts. It's a very integrated system. And just to slap tariffs on in some punitive way on a country like Canada and Mexico is really, you're shooting yourself in the foot by doing this. And I think, that might be one strategy, one way to play this out, is just let him go ahead and do it. Let him find out the consequences of this. Let him somehow claim a victory out of thin air, and then he'll back out of it, because he will quickly realize that this is sending the unemployment rate in the Midwest of the United States higher, and it's increasing costs, which is exactly what he doesn't want to happen. Not to mention the stock market reaction. And he does pay attention to things like that. He might not listen to Justin Trudeau, but he will listen to what the stock market is saying. And he won't want to be a president, under a crumbling stock market.
Yeah, especially when rich donors start to see their portfolios plummet, right? I mean, it can be that simple.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing
and
that?
A lot of those states, those red states, that support him, the Indianas, the Ohios, the Michigans, all of those states that support him, they're going to be the ones hit hardest in the auto sector. So it's going to be interesting to watch this play out.
Yeah, Todd, we have, like, obviously when you look at somebody with the power that the United States president does, plus the celebrity that Donald Trump has, he obviously commands an enormous audience and has the power with a few words or with hinting toward policy to move markets, to in some cases probably move where the dollar's at. You, as an experienced economist, what are you paying attention to? What's the canary in the coal mine? What are the factors you're looking at? What are the numbers that are moving, that are grabbing your attention relatively early in the presidency?
Well, some of those numbers, they only come out occasionally, but I'm going to be watching investment intentions in Canada. I think this is really where even the threat, the sort of Damocles hanging over us all this time. I think this is where it could have a very negative impact. Those companies in Canada, they might be a branch plant of an American company, but they have operations here in Canada. Are they holding back on investments in Canada or Mexico or elsewhere? And are they saying, well, we better, increase our plant and facility and manufacturing activity back in the United States, just as a hedge against any possible actions on tariffs? We don't know where this is going. It's all the chaos and uncertainty. But one way of sort of hedging yourself against that is consolidating more of your activity in the United States. That's exactly what Donald Trump wants. And in some ways, if you're just thinking of, America first, it is actually kind of a shrewd play to sort of threaten companies to invest back in the United States. Doesn't mean it's the best business decision for those companies. They are hedging their risks by doing that. It might cost more to do that. There's a reason there is a plant and facility in Canada and Mexico in the first place, mostly because of our cheaper currencies. But they might be induced to increase their plant and equipment investments in the United States only because of this continual threat. I think that's what I'm going to be watching the most.
Super Chat Ken's watching us, chiming in on our live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. He says those red states have countless farm programs that have funding that has now ceased. It's stopped because of DOGE, because of this Department of Government Efficiency. He says Trump voters are reaping what they sowed. I saw Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP, federal NDP, talking about musing about a 100% tariff on Teslas, which would obviously hit Elon Musk pretty hard. Is something like that? You can understand how that would resonate positively with Canadians, most especially those that aren't sort of aligned to or loyal to Tesla, as sort of like a way to get them back. But from an economist's perspective, is that counterproductive? Would you recommend that as a step Canada could take? Can you impose tariffs? Diplomatically, I'm talking, not literally, but diplomatically, on just one brand, one make of car?
That's a bigger question than diplomatically. I don't know. In some ways, it would catch their attention. It would send a very strong message. It economically, certainly, a Tesla is something we can do without. For sure, there'd be lots of consumers who might be disappointed because they want to buy a Tesla. But there is nothing about the Canadian economy that requires us to buy Teslas. That the same can't be said about specialized machinery and equipment. Farm equipment, that might come from the United States. That would actually hurt agricultural producers in Canada. A Tesla is a different thing. A Tesla is a luxury item. There are substitutes for it. It's not going to hurt our economy. But the better question, and this might be better answered by a political analyst, is do you want to kick that hornet's nest? Do you want to get Elon Musk's attention and make him mad? Is that only going to escalate this retaliatory situation we're in? I don't know. I've never met Elon Musk. I don't know if doing something like that would make him sort of be thoughtful and, maybe we shouldn't be such, mean trading partners. I think he might react differently and say, we're going to go even harder after Canada because of this. That just seems to be the way he and Donald Trump operate.
We've got Buddy Slippers here in the chat, says, look, I have a Tesla and I agree. We need to hit Elon Musk hard on this one. Isn't it interesting? People are talking about hitting Elon hard. I mean, just even an appearance in the Oval Office yesterday, it's Trump, the president, sitting at the desk, Elon Musk standing beside him, holding court. It's tough to know who you're even dealing with these days. Like for the Canadian delegation, who are you trying to reach here, Trump or Musk?
Yeah, he's not a likable character. I mean, I keep thinking this sounds like a whole Netflix special, like an 8-part series. The problem is Netflix wouldn't be able to write this script because it seems so improbable. It's more like Veep, which, it's more of a farce of the political system than a political drama, because you just can't imagine these things actually are happening right now. And these wild characters like Elon Musk, central to the whole plot and theme, a wholly unlikable character, a billionaire, a genius in his own right, I suppose, but just a wild character, and then being given all of this power, unelected. He is not an elected official. He's not even sanctioned to be part of the U.S. cabinet, but he has an enormous amount of power. So I don't know where this all goes. I just keep thinking this has got to end badly for the whole thing, because they are not executing their plan with precision, with military precision and organization. It seems to be just all over the map, chaos. Even communications out of the White House on a daily basis kind of contradict themselves. How many messages did we hear about tariffs in the week leading up to February 3rd? It seemed to change every hour. So in this wild political environment, not only does it create a lot of economic chaos and make it very difficult for business owners to make good decisions, but politically, I just seem to think, where is this going to end? Can this even go on for 4 years before something breaks, something happens, and maybe it's even the U.S. Citizens themselves that run out of patience with this?
Todd, you obviously you've spent a lot of your career paying keen and close attention to Alberta's economy, and Premier Smith has been kind of on a mission, certainly to fight for oil and gas in Herbert's and sort of the lead horse, if you will, of Alberta's economy. What are your thoughts on the tariff situation at this point? Danielle Smith's advocacy and sort of how that fits into the bigger picture of the cards that Canada can play in negotiating with the Americans.
Well, I mean, I guess I will give the premier credit for, doing what she's been elected to do, and that is stand up for Alberta. I do appreciate that position that she's taken, and standing up for Alberta's energy sector. We're also seeing, by the way, former Premier Rachel Notley, who is sitting on the Prime Minister's Council of Economic Experts, very forcefully in those conversations, making the case that now is the time to expand our pipeline network. And this is why we found ourselves in this bad situation. And Premier Smith is making the same arguments, that if we were not so reliant on the U.S. market, this is the only direction the pipelines go, except for the Northern Gateway, Trans Mountain. But we've found ourselves in this situation because of our own doing, because these other provinces and other parts of the country have been so reluctant and resistant to allow pipelines. So we're hearing that message from the premier. Where I would question the premier's tactic is this, kiss the ring diplomacy. That let's just listen to Trump. Let's give him what he wants. Let's give him a border czar. Let's give him a fentanyl czar. Let's give him everything he wants and appease him. It's a strategy. I don't know if it's going to work in the case of Donald Trump, because this is not the way you negotiate with bullies. It might be a good way to negotiate with reasonable-minded people. And, to be honest, I think if Donald Trump had said to Canada, hey, look, Canada, you are negligent in your NATO spending. You are way below your requirements. We feel like all the onus is on the United States to protect you. Until you bring your NATO spending up to something acceptable, we're going to put tariffs on you. Even that, in my mind, would at least be a reasonable and a logical argument that would be difficult for Canada to argue against. In that case, maybe some kiss the ring diplomacy might make sense, saying, yes, we are going to make it a priority. In 2 years, we're going to get our NATO spend. Let's give Trump what he wants, because it is a reasonable request. The stuff he's asking for, for Canada to solve fentanyl, I don't think anyone really believes this is about fentanyl. This is a bully in the playground saying, I'm going to punch you in the face unless you give me your lunch money. So you give him your lunch money, and then what is going to come after next? So I don't know. I mean, Premier Smith is obviously a far shrewder politician than me. There's a reason she's the premier and I am not. Maybe this kiss the ring diplomacy will actually work. But given the circumstances and given Trump's personality, I don't know if this is the right approach.
Todd, this isn't necessarily, and if you're just joining us on the Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets, we're talking to renowned economist Todd Hirsch. Todd, Idris, maybe more of a question for a political scientist. I don't know, but I'm curious for your take on it. He wonders, my question, Idris says, is how do democracies everywhere protect themselves from letting this happen to them?
Yeah, that is a better question for a political scientist. I guess the only thing I would say is we need to be watching very carefully this example that the U.S. and other countries, I mean, this is happening in Hungary, it's happening in India, it's happening in Brazil to some degrees, all of these countries, which, were liberal democracies, but they're eroding their democratic institutions. They're eroding their media. They're eroding their judicial system to some degrees, and they're consolidating more power within the leader. This is moving towards an authoritarian system. I think other countries, we need to be vigilant and make sure that we don't sort of quietly or complacently allow this to happen in our own countries. Because I don't think that's what anybody who lives in a liberal democracy wants. I don't hear a lot of people, even in the States, saying, yeah, let's end liberal democracy and move towards authoritarian government. We saw that movie 100 years ago or so in Germany. It did not end well. And we don't want that to happen again. So I think the rest of us, we need to just pay attention and learn from the lessons that we're seeing.
Good conversations and debates happening in the Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power. Randy answers back to Idris, says, I believe that watching and experiencing what's happening in the United States right now will be enough for folks in other countries to say no to this type of crap. Who knows? Ken K says they distract with tariff threats and taking over Greenland while they quietly dismantle U.S. democracy. A trick never works without a distraction. Alberta Girl says step back and see that they've cut funding in foreign aid. Now that they have all the power and the money, even the King of Jordan looks neutered in the Oval Office because America froze his $2 billion aid. Jay Draw says if only malicious compliance was an option. If they don't need anything of ours, then they shouldn't get anything of ours. But we still want and accept what they have and produce. That's a good point from Jay Draw. It's a mutually beneficial trade relationship. Donald Trump argues that the United States doesn't need Canada. We would present a counter argument for sure, but we need them, don't we?
Well, we do. And, Donald Trump, I guess, technically, if it can be produced in the United States, let's produce in the United States. The point is you're better off importing those things from Canada. Don't you want to be better off? Because in a lot of ways, again, largely because of currency, but, we can do it more efficiently in Canada. The economies of scale of especially those aluminum smelters in Quebec and the currency. You're better off buying this aluminum from Canada. Sure, over maybe the next 5 or 10 years, if investment in the U.S. aluminum increases, you can become self-sufficient in aluminum. But why would you want to? I mean, this is the whole argument economists make with the concept of comparative advantage, that all countries are better off specializing and trading with each other. So it's not a matter of, we want those jobs here in the United States. I understand that argument. But it's a feeble argument against the bigger case you can make, saying we're all better off. In fact, employment in the United States, employment in Canada, consumer prices, the price of aluminum, we're all better off specializing and trading. But that is something that the tariff argument, doesn't really understand.
Todd, here's one from Heavy D who proposes kind of a striking, a troubling hypothetical. But while we've got you here, Heavy D wonders, at what point should Canadians take any investments they have in the States and pull them out? At what point would Canadian dollars, Canadian folks' investments, assets in the United States be in danger of being frozen or seized? Now obviously, that would be a dramatic type circumstance, but bigger picture, should Canadians be evaluating where their investments are at in the States and the dollars that are invested down there, maybe even in real estate? I mean, there's a number of different angles we could take on this one.
It's a great question, and it's a bit of a dark question. The idea that Canadians' assets might be seized, maybe even traveling across the border might not be so easy. And what do you do if you've got property in Phoenix, and you can't actually get down there? Those are really dark questions. I think they're questions worth contemplating. I don't think we're there yet. But I never thought Donald Trump would ever be elected the first time. So who am I to make predictions about what might or what might not happen in this crazy world we live in? I can't give investment advice. I think that is a really great question that individuals should be having with their investment advisor. But I don't think it's a ridiculous question. I think it is something that it should be, at least in the back of our minds, thinking, what do I do? Am I too heavily exposed to investments in the United States? What happens if I don't have access to that? So I would not obviously recommend everyone pull out of their U.S. investments this morning, but it's something to think about as we move down this road.
Yeah, for sure. Sylvie says Danielle Smith is only defending part of Alberta. I don't see her defending agriculture. Gabe says, wow, pipelines are cool again. Gabe's got a point. There's more people, including Liberal cabinet ministers or former cabinet ministers, that are talking about the value of pipelines now. I know Conservatives, the Premier of Quebec talking about the value of pipelines is rich. I don't care where you land on pipelines. You got to acknowledge that is rich.
It's almost more shocking than anything that comes out of the White House when the Premier of Quebec is saying, well, maybe we could, do some pipelines. I think, it's a great example of how tables can turn really, really quickly and how we need to prepare ourselves for any outcome, which is a lot of the theme I talk about these days as an economist. I try less to focus on forecasting what's going to happen. I try now to prepare audiences. How do we deal with uncertainty? How do we deal with everything we thought we knew? Say, for example, Quebec being resolutely against pipelines. Now it's a different world. And now, there's different possibilities. Everything has changed. So how do we deal with that? And how do we navigate our way through those?
Joe, watching us on YouTube, says there's not enough demand nor supply to make it worth investing in pipelines. I know some folks would take issue on both the supply and demand side, but TMX did increase essentially the capability, the export capability quite dramatically. Did the Trans Mountain expansion, in your estimation, negate the need for or the potential benefit of other pipelines, including, let's say, hypothetically, Energy East?
That's a good question. And I'm not, steeped in the energy economics. I think, obviously it provided a safety valve. It gives us more access to Tidewater and those other markets, which helps. I don't think it entirely negates the need for access to, increased access to other markets. But, we don't know where this all goes. We could say, as Canadians, and by the way, pipeline companies, to my knowledge, none of them want to touch any of this because there's still too much risk. So it could be maybe the federal government and some provincial governments led by Alberta. We're going to invest in pipelines to the East Coast. We're going to get Northern Gateway going again. We're going to do all this stuff. Start spending billions and billions and billions of dollars. This would be a 10-year project. Only for the government in the United States to flip. And something goes back to, of course, Canada, we want your oil. We're not going to tariff you. Then does it kind of make all of those projects a bit uneconomic? Sure, we might argue we don't want to get back into a situation where we're reliant on the US. So we're going to go ahead with these projects. But the economics of it would change if, in fact, there is zero threat anymore of a tariff. And we can't say where that's going to go.
We're talking to economist Todd Hirsch. Erica, in her live chat powered by Park Power, says, I think that the President, Trump, realized tariffs on energy were a horrible idea, so he paused all those tariffs and came back with different targeted ones instead. PNC Bio says a much larger neighbor threatening a much smaller neighbor feels very much 2022 Ukraine. Says, I don't think that we're unreasonable to be worried. I mean, especially considering all this talk about Canada becoming the 51st state. In just a second, Todd's made an argument this week that maybe Canada should Maybe Canada's more powerful than everybody realizes. We'll get into that. The possibility of Canada as the 51st state. Don't tear your hair out yet, Real Talkers. But first, I want to put something on your radar, something very important. You know, when events beyond our borders do put Canada's economy in jeopardy, we've got to make the right choices here at home, like investing in world-class research and learning that fuels Alberta's prosperity. We cannot afford to underfund academic staff at the University of Alberta, because we can't afford to lose the teachers, researchers, and students that we need to power Alberta's future. Go to supportthespark.ca today and help keep our future strong. This is a message from the Association of Academic Staff of the University of Alberta. We've been talking a lot about our support for UCAN Youth Services and the incredible work they're doing with at-risk young adults aged 18 to 25, providing pathways out of harm's way and into economic independence. Well, they've got a lot going on over the next while, including Kyle Dubé Day, the incredible leader of that UCAN team up until his untimely passing just a short while ago. We'll be remembering him, honoring him in March. And of course, they've got their comedy nights as well. You can check out all the information on their website, ucan.ca, or book your table directly for a comedy night in March at ucancomedy.com. We also want to put Monday, the 20th of February on your radar. We got a lot coming up there, and we're going to be getting more into that. Everything all related to the great work that's being done by this amazing team, but proudly based out of Edmonton, this nonprofit, UCAN Youth Services. And we're sure proud to partner with them here at Real Talk. At North Road Investment Council, they have a very simple question for you, but it may not be simple to answer. That's basically, how did your investments do in 2024? According to the team at North Road, the Canadian stock market, as measured by the TSX Composite Index, returned over 21% in 2024. That's a return that all Canadians should be proud of. Kind of fits with the theme of what we're talking about with Todd, doesn't it? But if the Canadian equity portion of your portfolio did not do this well, or if you don't even know how you did, you might be interested in learning about a different way to invest. Index investing tools are used by many sophisticated investors around the world, including right here in Edmonton with North Road Investment Council. To learn more about using passive investment tools in your portfolio, please visit them on their website today. You'll find them at northroadic.com. And John, before we get back to this conversation, I got to tell you about something that happened at Friesen Brothers last night.
All right, give it to me.
So we're coming from basketball practice, a little one at basketball practice. We thought we'd stop into the Friesen Brothers kitchen and just grab dinner, right? So I thought, well, I'm going to go for myself. Everybody can get what they want. I'm going to go with that beef short rib, the braised beef short rib, the one that I love, and then the side of mashed potatoes, roasted root vegetables. And as the Friesen Brothers team member there, she's putting it all together for me, hot and ready to go, ready to take out. The braised beef actually falls off the bone.
I can see your face right now.
I just thought, well, I think I know what I'm talking about on the show tomorrow.
It's like a Homer Simpson moment.
And she looks at me and she says, the beef actually fell off the bone. Is that okay? And we laughed and we laughed. You can check out Friesen Brothers in your community today or any day. They're ready to serve you in 16 different Alberta communities. 70 years they're celebrating in 2025. Still proudly Alberta grown and Alberta owned. True story. Fell right off the bone. We're hanging out with Todd Hirsch. And Todd, I got to be honest, I absolutely loved your post on LinkedIn just the other day. People can find you there. You say Canada is not joining the United States. So you make it very clear how you feel about it. But you put some numbers in front of us. You put a reality in front of us that indicates that Canada would actually have a lot of sway were we to join the United States. Might not actually work in the president's favor. Take us into this.
Yeah, well, first of all, Ryan, you've made me really hungry with the talk of
and I'm not even going to apologize for it.
And it's like 9 a.m, and all I want now is short rib.
Yeah.
But yeah, the post I had about, if Canada did join the United States, first of all, I got to be really clear because I don't want a lot of hate email. I am not in favor of joining the United States and never would I be. But I just kind of put out a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, a bit of a sarcastic post saying, if he really wanted Canada as the 51st state, we'd actually be quite a powerful state. We would be not only I mean, we double the geographic size of the United States. But population-wise, we are larger than California. We're 41.5 million. California's 39. Their economy is larger, but population-wise, we would be the largest state. And assuming that if you really want us as a state, Mr. Trump, not as a territory like Puerto Rico or Guam, but if you really want us as what he called as the cherished 51st state, we would be, be given electoral votes, probably enough to sway elections. Now, I know there are a lot of what we would call maybe conservative Republicans in Canada. A lot of people in Canada think Donald Trump is on the right track, and that's okay. They're entitled to that opinion. But I have never seen a poll that suggests that Canadians overall favor Donald Trump or even the Republicans. We would likely be a deep blue state like California or New York or Vermont or Washington. That is just sort of the way Canadians tend to view the world. So if we were the largest state, and if we did have all those, we'd have 2 senators, but we'd have probably about 57 Congress people, that would be a significant portion. And, I just joked in the post that I said, why don't we join in time for the 2026 midterm elections, get all of our electoral votes and our senators and everything in place, and, just enough to flip the Senate and the House of Representatives back to blue, and then vote to leave. It was a tongue-in-cheek post. It is surprising, actually, how many people have responded saying, you're an idiot, this is a terrible idea. It's like, guys, I'm just kidding. It's a thought experiment, but I think it is something, and then lots of other people say, well, Donald Trump doesn't want all of Canada. He only wants Alberta, or he would never make us a state. He just is going to make us a territory. Reasonable arguments, but why does Donald Trump keep using the word state then? And why does he refer to Canada? If he really just wanted Alberta, he could have said, well, we're just going to come in, we're going to take Alberta as a territory. That would actually be more terrifying than this idea of he's taking all of us and making us a state.
Maybe I'm just trying to think it through real quick, and I acknowledge that obviously, the natural resources that I think might be of most interest to the United States would certainly include our water. And I'm just sort of thinking through watersheds in Alberta, and obviously that's on everybody's radar now because we're talking about coal, and we're talking about the Oldman Basin and coal mining on the eastern slopes. But you have to imagine there'd be natural resources across the country that the Americans would be interested in. None of this has to do with sort of a kumbaya come together. This is about the United States trying to protect its empire into the next 100 years, right? I mean, this is about Arctic sovereignty. This is about security. This is about being closer to the Russians. This is about having a bigger footprint. This is about having more water security, more obviously more energy security. I mean, that's what this is all about. Can we agree?
Oh, I think so. And, maybe this is the argument that Canada and Greenland, for that matter, maybe we're not making well enough to say, hey, look, Donald, you don't need to actually take us on as a state. Let's work more closely together. We are happy to sell you those resources. Now, I would say there's a caveat around fresh water because that's a really emotional one. But when it comes to oil, when it comes to our base metals, when it comes to our uranium and potash and timber resources, and, have all you want. You're going to have to pay for it, of course. We will sell it to you. But you can achieve that security in resources by working with us. You don't have to take us on as a state. No one wants that. And Greenland, the same way. Why Denmark says, hey, look, Greenland's not for sale. But if you want to sit down as a NATO partner and as a liberal democracy and as a good trading partner, let's talk about more U.S. investment in Greenland to maybe free up some of those rare earth minerals and oil resources in Greenland. You're going to have to buy it, but let's stop talking about annexing and taking sovereign countries and sovereign territories and just making them, turning Greenland into, what was it, red, white, and blue land. Like, this is, it's a farce. Like, no one is going to take them seriously, but this is the world we're in somehow.
The Gulf of America and red, white, and blue land. It's just unbelievable.
You can't make that up, right? You cannot make that up. And if this was a Netflix special, I would have turned it off because I thought, this is ridiculous.
No, Todd. It's the opposite. It's if it was a Netflix special, we could all laugh about it and it would be hilarious. But it's the fact that it's real.
Yeah, if it was a farce, like Veep was a farce, right? It was a comedy. It wasn't The West Wing, which wasn't a comedy. It was a serious political drama. The West Wing never would have written such a ridiculous script because it's not believable. Veep, of course, it would have because it's a farce.
Yeah. On your LinkedIn post, we'd be the largest state. Here's a wild idea. Take him up on his offer. Join the U.S. Get our 56 electoral college votes, our 2 senators, our 57 members of the House of Representatives. Wait for the 2026 midterms. Flip the Senate. Flip the House. And then vote to separate from the U.S. How does that math work for you, Mr. President? One of your top comments, by the way, on LinkedIn, this thing exploded. You have like 400 comments on this, Todd. Olivier Medell, I don't know Olivier, but says, what a brilliantly diabolical plan. Says Canada goes full Trojan moose, sneaks into the U.S. electoral system, flips the balance of power, and then poof, pulls a Brexit, but with maple syrup. Olivier goes on to say, but let's be real. Trump hasn't thought this through because it's not a serious proposal. It's just another headline grabber. If he really wanted Canada to join, he'd first have to figure out how to get Americans to survive a winter without complaining about socialist health care while secretly enjoying free doctor visits. He says, also imagine the culture shock. U.S. tipping culture versus Canadians' passive-aggressive sorry for everything. Gun laws versus do you have a permit for that butter knife? Football versus... well, we also do football, but with different rules. Olivier says, I say we keep it as it is. We'll trade poutine for burgers, let you vacation in Banff, and everybody can stay in their lane. I say we add Olivier to our team of diplomats that are negotiating with the Trump White House.
Yeah, I read that comment from Olivier. Yeah, and it's, everyone stay in your lane. We've been great neighbors and great trading partners for, 150 years. And even before that, well, I mean, there was the War of 1812. But, let's not ruin everything. But, that's the way rational people tend to view world politics. But Donald Trump is a different creature. And say what you want about him, but this, he's approaching things as a real estate mogul.
Yeah.
And what is a good deal for him is, needs to be a bad deal for somebody else. And if I want it, I'm going to grab it. I mean, we've heard him use this language. He grabs things. That's his personality. And a lot of Americans voted for him because of that personality. So, he was democratically elected. Where democracy goes in the United States from here is a question mark. But a lot of Americans like that attitude in him that we're just going to, grab life and grab what we want and make America great.
Ben says, mess with the moose, get the antlers. How about that? I appreciate that. Alberta Ganger wondering if you'd ever consider a career in politics, Todd, would you?
I would not.
All right. And Super Chat.
I've been asked 100 times, but
yeah.
Interestingly, by almost every party.
Is that right? In provincially speaking?
Yeah.
The NDP and the Conservatives have asked you or gauged your interest in running.
Well, not the UCP, but back in the day, the PCs.
Yeah. Did you give it 2 seconds of thought?
I did. I did give it 2 seconds of thought. And I respect anybody who goes into public life in any party, to be frank. If it's UCP, NDP, if you are, you give your career to public service, I really do respect that. And I did think about it for a while, but I thought I'm probably better able to serve publicly by being a thought leader. Once you sort of pick a team, your comments are completely discounted by the other team and anyone who votes for the other team. So, and that was the struggle that I always had. I would have a hard time speaking my mind about things because once you pick a team, you got to, toe that line and you got to stick with the team. And I have yet to find a team in this province or federally that I could say in every situation I can stand up and truthfully defend that position. So I think a person like me, I think I better serve Albertans and Canadians, hopefully, by being an engaging thought leader who puts out respectful and intelligent things to think about, maybe sometimes in a humorous way, like my LinkedIn post, which was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But I think I'm better at serving the public in that role rather than as an elected official.
Let me also point out the obvious. Were you to seek elected office, you would never be able to do interviews like this in front of a wall of custom or unique shoes.
I was going to say I'd have to take all the shoes down.
Those shoes would have to go. You'd have to sell them.
How much they worth, Todd?
How much are they worth, Todd? We want to know the value. What do you have those shoes insured for, Todd? We want to know. Super Chat Ken, he just kicked $5 into our YouTube Super Chat. And he says, Todd Hirsch is a gift to Alberta. I'm glad he uses his bright mind in service to our province. Todd, what that means is that Ken has kicked in $5 toward our beer fridge. Next time you join us in studio, you help yourself. We'll have a cold one with your name on it.
I love it. And I will be in studio. You know, Edmonton is my hometown. I was born and raised, and I've lived only in Alberta. Spent roughly the first third of my life in Edmonton, now roughly the second 2/3 in Calgary, but Edmonton is my hometown. So next time I'm on the show, I will make a point of being in studio with you, Ryan.
Well, that sounds great, buddy. I spent the first half of my life in Calgary and the second half in Edmonton with a brief forays into Vancouver in the middle and love both the cities. I will point out to folks, obviously this interview is going to reach people all across the country and beyond. If you found value, if you love the insights that Todd's been putting in front of us, and you're the person that's booking the next keynote or the next speaker for your corporate event or for your organization or agency, you can check out toddhirsch.com. Learn more about, forget predicting, start preparing. And of course, Todd travels, basically, Todd, you're all around the world, aren't you? In particular, across North America, delivering these keynotes.
Mostly North America. I don't get overseas too often. My topic tends to be more kind of US, Canada, but from time to time. But I'll go anywhere.
Thanks for doing this, buddy. It's great to see your face again.
Thanks, Ryan. Have a great day.
Yeah, you got it. You as well. That's Todd Hirsch. You just notice he slipped in that little comment near the end where he says, and we know the president grabs things.
I know.
He said as much. I went, oh, yeah.
I like the G-rated content on our live chat where somebody said, "Is he going to grab us by the goosey?" Okay. I like how they kept it clean. But another comment in here about the shoes saying, there's nothing more elitist than owning a bunch of expensive shoes that cost more than people's rent or mortgage. Well, what about owning actual property and charging people high amounts of rent and mortgage? That's what Pierre's doing.
We honestly
can go back and forth on this all day. Every politician has lots of money.
Let me just ask this. Are we honestly going to, and I have a whole thing. I actually took some time and put a little something together to deliver to Real Talkers. It's like my version of baking muffins for everybody in the office. I got something I want to serve up.
You're making muffins?
On the Mark Carney $2,000 shoe thing. And I do want to acknowledge people are in the chat saying it's been debunked. The shoes aren't 2,000. Who cares? We're going to get into the story in just a second. But you're going to have people that are cracking on Mark Carney, calling him a globalist and an elitist for having $2,000 shoes. And they're going to be the exact same people that are cheering for Donald Trump and Elon Musk right now, the richest man on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be cracking down on elitists. We're going to crack down on elitists wearing our Donald Trump MAGA merchandise and cheering for Elon Musk. Like, give your fucking heads a shake.
It's
like, it just, to me, it is comical. It is comical, which is why I'm laughing about this. I'm not mad. I'm not triggered. I think it is absolutely hilarious. And we're going to get onto that in just a second. But Pierre Poilievre, he set the table for this, so we're going to talk about it. Yeah. Pierre Poilievre asked for everybody to start talking about.
He opened the door.
He opened the door. He served it up to everybody. Yeah. And so we're going to run with it. In just a second.
He better be wearing H&M suits the rest of the time he's going. You know what I mean? Because everything he does, wears, drives in, buys for food is now going to be
by the way. He has a driver.
You know what I mean? Everything's going to be under the microscope.
Yeah. He's got a driver. His accommodations are paid for. It's stored away. He's got a pretty nice pad. Yeah. He's got a chef. He's got a huge
property.
Staff. Like, come on. Yeah. And I'm not saying he shouldn't.
No,
I'm not saying he shouldn't.
Not at all.
He's the leader of the official opposition. He should have that all.
You can't throw bombs.
But don't try to pretend like you're buying your shoes at Walmart. Don't try to pretend like your buddy who got a little too fat, your buddy who grew a paunch, gave you all his old suits, Pierre, and now you're wearing all your buddy's old suits. Come on. Yeah. Come on. I would rather see Mr. Poilievre, and we're going to take a look at some polling in a second. Obviously, he's got to be sort of shivering in his $80 boots. He's got to be shivering in his boots looking at the gains that pollsters say Mark Carney's making. I'm still not convinced that the Liberals could pull out an election win, but the prognosticators are saying that the outcome is a whole lot more rosy, the potential outcome a whole lot more promising than it was when Justin Trudeau was leading the Liberals. That's for sure. We're going to get into that. We'll get into more of the live chat. We got a whole lot more in store. We're going to have a few laughs before the end of the show. I guarantee you that, but it is Wednesday, which means our friends at Tourism Jasper give us an opportunity to step outside the news cycle and recognize the absolute treasured memories to be made. What lies in wait in the crown jewel of the Rocky Mountains, and of course that is Jasper, Alberta. And this week we just want to show some love to our friends at Marmot Basin. This is one of my absolute most favorite places to be on planet Earth. I talked to you a lot about Marmot Basin, and for good reason. Number one, because they've got great snow. Number two, they've got lifts that service every single stage of your mountain riding experience. Whether you got the little ones that are looking for ski lessons, snowboarding lessons, they've even got a wonderful child care program, all the way up to the beginners, then the intermediates, and then the advanced skiers and boarders. Well, you're not going to be left wanting. They've got incredible terrain there for you as well. Marmot Basin, of course, recently expanded their offerings. I was talking to you about that knob quad that they've got running now. Back in the day, I mean, used to love riding the knob chair. And then there was kind of like a vintage feel to it. It was that old school double chair. Well, now they've got the quad that can take you all the way, essentially, right up to the top. They've got blue and black runs coming off of it. They've had great snowfall over the past couple of weeks, and I also want to put this on your radar this weekend. I know for everybody, if you've been in Western Canada, this cold snap has been something else. I mean, we're talking like a few weeks of minus 20 in a row. This weekend is going to be beautiful at Marmot Basin. Coming up on Saturday, that's the 15th of February. What a great last-minute impromptu Valentine's giveaway. The 15th of February, this Saturday, the forecast calling for -8 and sunny. That is about as good as it gets on the mountain. -8 and sunny. And then on the Sunday, the 16th, -6 with a mix of sun and clouds. So the snow conditions will be absolutely fabulous. Don't forget, you've got tourism operators ready to welcome you with open arms, the hoteliers out there, the restaurateurs out there, the late night live music venues ready for you as well. What a perfect time to get out. Maybe make a last-minute call to get your loved one, get your family out to Jasper. You can find more information online at jasper.travel. You can also check out skimarmot.com for up-to-the-minute conditions. And of course, don't forget there's some great deals there as well at Marmot Basin. They've got that Marmot Plus card, which is really, really a great offer for families that are looking to ski or ride at basically half off. Again, at skimarmot.com, you can learn more about their family package. Look at this, man. They've just got an absolutely fantastic offering to enjoy the sun and slopes at Marmot. You can learn more about those half-price lift tickets with the Marmot Escape card at skimarmot.com. My Jasper Memories is presented every Wednesday here on Real Talk by our wonderful friends at Tourism Jasper. So this was like my favorite part of yesterday. This was like my absolute favorite part of yesterday, and it's just because it made me laugh, it made me roll my eyes, but in the best way, because people get super engaged and excited about this. Pierre Poilievre tweets out a photo. Morning Buzz TV, I've never heard of them before. This might have been their biggest tweet of all time, but they put this out there. Liberal leadership frontrunner Mark Carney caught wearing Xenia sneakers in a photo worth over $2,000. And there he is, the former governor of the Bank of Canada, wants to be the next prime minister. Standing in net for he's on the ODR. Looks like maybe some kids playing hockey. He's got his goalie stick. We know he's a former goalie. Grew up in Laurier in Edmonton. Played goal there, growing up in minor hockey. And
They're
Pierre Poilievre
thinkers.
says
You know what I mean? They're OCD. They watch the numbers.
You know what would have been funnier? It would have been funnier. It would have been a great Canadian reference if instead of the cost of the shoes, if Pierre Poilievre would have just said, do we really want a goalie to be in charge? That might have been way funner. It's like asking a band, do you want the drummer to be in charge?
But they're very focused. They're very, if you ask me, who would I want as a roommate? It's a goalie. His laundry's done. It's folded perfectly. Everything's clean. Like, they're so OCD that it's a good thing. I can see why he's good with numbers, why he's a banker, why he's an economist, why he's all those things.
So I put this out there, and I just basically, I mean, I'm having some fun with it, obviously, but I just basically said, like, yeah, this just in, globally recognized finance wizard, and I didn't realize I'd trigger so many people by calling Mark Carney a finance wizard. I thought it was a safe statement with a guy that's been the governor of the Bank of Canada, the governor of the Bank of England. He sits on more boards than we can count. I said, this just in, globally recognized finance wizard can afford nice kicks. Like I said earlier, I personally know at least a dozen conservatives who own $10,000 watches. Would Prime Minister Poilievre, champion of the free market, impose a cap on what private citizens can spend on fashion?
Yeah, this is a great comment here. Bunny slippers. Let's see how much Pierre Poilievre's wife's purses are worth. That's going to be another thing. Like,
but do we want it to get in a race to the bottom?
I
on this
don't.
Kind of
but
stuff?
He's going to be under that microscope now. People are going to be looking at what his wife wears, where they're going on vacation. Like, he opened this door, Ryan.
Now, you and I were talking about Tom Brady's watch at the Super Bowl. And it has served,
God, throw it up.
And it's
throw
been
it up
pointed
right now.
Yeah, well, it's been pointed out that Tom Brady was wearing about a $750,000 watch.
$749,000
at the Super Bowl. Now, if Mark Carney was wearing a $749,000 watch, then 100% Pierre Poilievre should talk about it. And it was relevant, or was it? You be the judge, real talkers, when Jagmeet Singh was spotted with a bag. Remember the bag that Jagmeet was carrying that was
in the car, and
a couple of grand, a few grand. Was it Bonnie Crombie that was videoed or photographed stepping out of a Maserati heading to work? You know, that can be a tough look for a politician. But if we're going to start getting into the $2,000 range, which is what some high-end parkas cost, which is what some nice sunglasses cost, quite frankly, not everybody has them. But let's also be honest, not everybody has to wear what absolutely everybody can afford to wear. Can we all agree on that? We're not wearing uniforms,
100.
right? This isn't like communism from 80 years ago. We're not all lining up for the same loaf of bread, right? Andrew checks in on my X post, on my Twitter post, and says the real story might be how worried one would have to be about polling to dedicate staffers to pinpointing the origin and cost of Carney's clothing, which is an interesting observation. Why don't we take a look at this polling that was released just yesterday, Johnny? This is pretty interesting. This is from Leger. Leger is a reputable pollster across the country, and when Leger releases those findings, obviously people pay attention, and some pretty interesting developments. So we talked to you about the Nanos research poll a couple of days ago that showed that 40% of those polled, 40% of Canadians polled, figured that Carney was a better choice to be negotiating with Trump. 26% said it would be Pierre Poilievre. Well, look at this. We'll describe this for those of you listening on the podcast. This from Leger this week. A national poll shows that right now, if Canadians were to vote with Mark Carney as the leader of the Liberals, that the Liberals would take 178 seats in an election. The Conservatives would take 138. In other words, a 40-seat win for the Liberals. Now, obviously, the NDP, in this hypothetical, in this polling, the NDP gets absolutely decimated and winds up with 4 seats across the country, the Greens with 2, the Bloc with 21. Pretty interesting. They're predicting that the Liberals, and this is a poll from Leger, okay? This is not like me on Twitter. This is not us walking around downtown Edmonton asking people what they think, or this is not us calling all of our left-wing friends. The poll shows that the Liberals would hold 3 seats in Alberta, which I think is maybe unlikely. I don't know. So you look right now, they've got 2. They've got George Chahal down in Calgary. Maybe keeps his seat. You got Randy Boissneau in Edmonton Center. That's going to be a hotly contested riding, but Randy's got some baggage he's going to have to deal with.
His twin brother also running.
Well, he says he's running again. But you got the Liberals grabbing 3 seats in Alberta. I got to be honest, I'm a little bit cynical about that. So I take every poll result with a grain of sand. I am not calling anything. I'm not predicting a Liberal win. But real talkers, you remember what we were talking about like 2 months ago, where polling was showing. I mean, there was some talk. People were saying that the Liberals might lose official party status. They may have fewer than 12 seats. And so this is a dramatic turnaround. There's still a lot of runway. Carney hasn't even won the Liberal leadership. We've not seen Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre in a debate. That'd sure be interesting. But pretty compelling polling results released from Leger on February 11th.
Yeah, do you want to see what Mark said here?
Yeah, why don't we get to it? So this is Mark Carney talking about this. Oh, pardon me, this is Mark Levesque. You're showing us that one right now. Yeah,
Mark.
Perfect. Yeah, good stuff. So this is Mark Levesque. Obviously, if you know politics, you know Mark, and he goes on and he just basically says, okay, he says this is serious. He says Leger is one of the best, if not the best pollster in Canada. Maybe the Conservatives need to take this seriously and stop the childish name-calling and juvenile populist bullshit like today's post on the cost of Carney's shoes, because visibly it's not working. And that's why I just thought that the Poilievre shoes thing was such a kind of a, I mean, I get that, you know, it's sort of like meat to the base. It's red meat to the base. He's just like Justin. I mean, even if you look at his tweet, and I'll show it again, Johnny, if you look at this, and I mean, I'm a bit of a grammar nerd. I'm a bit of a sort of a geek that way. But if you look, he's just like Justin. He's got all the words capitalized, like he's just like Justin. Mm-hmm. That's a headline, right?
Yeah,
this is the slogan.
Yeah.
He's just like Justin. But Canadians want more right now. Canadians that are wondering about a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. Canadians that are wondering about the future of our trade relationship with our biggest partner, that are wondering about our sovereign claim to the Arctic, that are wondering about our relationship with the United States and this border, that are wondering about big picture stuff, probably don't give a rip about Mark Carney's shoes. You know what I mean? And so that's why I just think that it's so bizarre that the federal conservative leader who wants you to believe, Pierre Poilievre wants you to believe that he's just a regular everyday guy, right? Fighting for the working class, is zeroed in on the fact that Carney's spotted wearing these nice shoes. They're not even that fancy. They're just nice. I mean, I'm not going to spend $2,000 on a pair of shoes because I don't have $2,000 to spend on a pair of shoes. But it's not like they're studded with rhinestones, right?
I mean, everybody wants, this is the thing, with the economy bad, everyone wants a little more success. Everyone wants a little more dollars in their pocket. And it's, a lot of people would save. A lot of people would spend on groceries and pay the mortgage off a little faster. But you know, the majority of us out there, I'm not saying we all want to be covered, you know, wearing $2,000 shoes, but we'd buy a nice blazer. We'd buy our wife a nice dress and a purse, or our partner a nice outfit. Like, these are the things everyday people want. They don't, you know, normal people don't want to be millionaires, but they want a little taste of the good life, just like everyone else. And are we going to, like, put everyone under a microscope and say you've got to be thrifty with everything?
What about the message?
They're just like politicians.
What about the message that with me as prime minister, everybody will be able to afford the shoes they want?
Do you want to see what Frank said about the polling?
I read you Mark Levesque's comment. Mark is the former chief economist at the Public Sector Pension Investment Board, chief economic strategist at TD Security. So that's an economist saying you got to focus on the issues. Here's what Frank Graves had to say. I don't know if you follow him, a Voice of Frankie on Twitter. He's a good follow. He's a pollster himself. And so he hasn't released the results of this poll unless he's doing it while we're talking here. But he's giving us some insights. He says current polling that he's doing, Frank Graves is doing, says the net impact of Carney as leader on the likelihood of voting Liberals is a plus 11. He's gaining 11 points, which is a big deal. For Freeland, it's a net negative. So Frank says we've got to move on now. This is his opinion. It says we'll move on now to how a Carney-led Liberal Party would fare against a Poilievre-led Conservative Party. Says it would be a Liberal minority with these numbers. And so that's what the pollsters are saying. Now, take it with a grain of salt, but it looks like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, people are moving on from talking about the outcome of the Liberal leadership race, now sort of projecting that assumed outcome, which everyone could get burned on, and talking about what it might look like in a general election. Pretty fascinating stuff. Yeah. Now, I just want to get one thing straight. If it's not clear already, Mark Carney, as the former governor of the Bank of Canada, an internationally respected economist, regardless of how you feel about the Liberals or Justin Trudeau, this is a guy that has spent his entire career in high finance. So was anybody under the impression that he's shopping for his clothing? And I'm not throwing shade at those of you that do, but was anybody under the impression that Mark Carney was buying his shoes at Walmart? Like, obviously not. You know, but here we have Pierre Poilievre, who's the so-called champion of the common man, who's out here railing against elite fashion while rocking a $2,000 Canada Goose parka. You know, the same brand that has become a global status symbol for the ultra-rich. Like, how many music videos have Canada Goose parkas in them? A lot, right? The same coat costs a lot more than most Canadians or many Canadians' monthly rent. And so the hypocrisy, I think, would be hilarious if it wasn't so predictable. And again, I talked earlier about the perks that Pierre Poilievre enjoys as leader of the official opposition, and I'm not cracking on those perks. I think that we want our political leaders, especially our federal political leaders, to be well compensated, to be well supported, to be well looked after. It's in the nation's best interest, right? But there's a big salary. There's taxpayer-funded travel, a gold-plated pension, a security detail, right? You think that Pierre Poilievre is flying economy class and bringing a brown bag lunch to work? Not a chance. The reality is, being a high-level politician in Canada on any side of the aisle comes with certain privileges, and it should. I don't want our federal political leaders to be scraping by or distracted by financial stress. We need them focused on fixing the problems that actually matter to us. And so here's the real question. Does it matter if politicians wear expensive shoes or coats? Are we really going to pretend that leadership is about who shops where? Does the price tag on Mark Carney's footwear impact your grocery bill or your mortgage rate or your ability to cover the utilities from month to month or fill your tank with gas? Obviously not. But it is a great distraction from the fact that conservatives don't seem interested at this point in offering real solutions. And that was made apparent with the shoes tweet. You know, Canadians are not struggling because Mark Carney wears nice shoes. Not even close. They're struggling because housing is unaffordable across the country, because grocery prices are out of control, because wages have not kept up with inflation. They're struggling because our healthcare system is buckling under the weight of bad policy and inaction and alleged corruption. And instead of hearing how the next federal government plans to fix it, we're supposed to get worked up over a pair of boots. I think that Pierre Poilievre and the official opposition Conservatives need to decide what they actually stand for. Are they going to keep peddling this tired, performative outrage about so-called elites, or are they going to present a real plan for governing? Canadians are sick of this nonsense, and they don't care. You've told me in my tweets. We can get into some of your responses, but people don't care what shoes Mark Carney is wearing. They care about whether or not they can put shoes on their kids' feet. So less shoe commentary and more solutions, please. Enough with the sideshows, and let's get serious.
Yeah, but I do care about this watch.
Is this the Tom Brady watch?
So this is what, I mean, when you've got a watch that's so gold, it's like the color is like above gold. It's like mustard. It's
incredible.
It's wow.
I mean, I got to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, you
think
can't
that
not look at this and
spending
be like,
$750,000
wow,
on a watch is insane.
It's ridiculous.
Regardless of how much money you make.
Oh,
and maybe this exhibits my absolute lack of fashion sense, but I think that is about the most gaudy, ugly watch that I've ever seen in my life.
It's an eye grabber, and that's exactly what we did. We were sitting there at On the Rocks, shout out to one of the best Super Bowl parties ever, having our little buffet, taking a sip of beer, and I nearly spit mine out when I saw Tom Brady on the screen. I was like, Ryan, look at that watch, and you immediately Google, and you're like, $750,000.
Yeah.
A house. That's a house on your wrist.
That's a really
nice house.
Well, it depends on where you're buying it.
Well, today in Canada, that is a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom.
Minus Vancouver, minus Toronto,
yes.
minus
in
Calgary.
Edmonton, it's a nice
In
house.
Edmonton, you can get a nice pad for that. Vamp Fashions is wondering, did I even watch Pierre's announcement about the North or any of his speeches? We watch virtually all or at least snippets of Pierre's speeches. We bring them to you. I was actually quite complimentary about Pierre Poilievre about a week ago of his 3-point plan about cutting taxes on businesses and the like. I hope you remember that, Vamp. I know you're around a lot. Idris says, I did watch his video of the North without giving mention to First Nations. Deeply unserious. No pipeline or port comes without First Nations cooperation and ownership. I do want to acknowledge we've seen a ton of comments in our live chat as well. I saw you, Randy, making a comment about Turtle Island and the 51st state and how it would never happen. The treaties obviously coming into play. If we're not digging too seriously into the mechanics or the logistics of Canada becoming the 51st state, it's because, I guess, on principle, we're refusing to take the idea seriously. But yeah. I do absolutely take the point. I want to recognize Ralu for the $20 kicked into the super chat. Says you got to vote ABC, anything but American wannabe conservatives. There you go. Thanks, Ralu. We appreciate that. Idris following up by saying slogans are not plans.
Do we want to show this Trump clip before?
Do you want? I mean, we're not wrapping yet, but let me pay a couple bills and then we'll see. This is, I mean, I do think here's something that I agree with Donald Trump on, and I don't think that you're going to agree with me on it.
No,
Johnny.
and I'm ready for it today.
I think that you and I are probably going to lock horns in just a quick second. But that's okay. It's okay for us to have hearty and vociferous disagreements. Would you agree? I think that that's all right, and I think that that's healthy in any relationship. And so we'll go there in just a quick second. Donald Trump with an executive order that I can get behind, and I have a feeling I'm going to lose 80% of this audience with this one, but hopefully you'll come back. This is something that does impact virtually every single person on planet Earth. That in just a second. But first, I want to give a shout out to the team at Complete Care Restoration. We've spent a lot of time talking about, and Johnny, by the way, we've got some great news coming up, courtesy of our friends out in Jasper. It was Councillor Wendy Hall that let us know the other day. They've got housing rolling in. The federal government made funds available, and yesterday they saw an initial delivery of a lot of these. You might describe them as kind of like the oil field trailers, the temporary housing. It's on its way out there. That's because the temporary solution is what they're looking for, as the permanent fix is happening. The team at Complete Care Restoration right there in the mix, getting folks back on their feet, homes and businesses restored from that wildfire. They do it all, helping people get back, restored properties, rebuilt peace of mind, fire, flood, sewer backups, black mold, asbestos, you name it. Complete Care Restoration does it, and they'll work directly with your insurance company and take it off your plate. If you find yourself in a situation like this, make sure you remember the name Complete Care Restoration. If you're unemployed or underemployed and looking for a great opportunity, you're a team player, you're a hard worker, you're a self-starter, I want to direct you to Kubi Renewable Energy. They've got locations in Lethbridge, Kamloops, Calgary, and Edmonton, and they're hiring right now. You can learn more on their website, kuby.ca. That's KUBY.ca. They're planning on their biggest year yet. They're forecasting huge growth in 2025, and that's saying a lot because they've been skyrocketing over the past few years. It's Canada's fastest growing solar installer, and they're looking for teammates on installs, on sales, on office management, in HR, you name it. Career opportunities abound today at kuby.ca. Our friends at California Closets are the bar none absolute best in the business at custom closets and storage solutions for the whole home. And I want to remind you that this is a team that is proudly locally owned, employing Albertans. All of their manufacturing happens in the province of Alberta, and they source their materials from Canadian suppliers. California Closets is helping folks reimagine their spaces and make the most out of their primary bedrooms, their walk-in closets, their guest bedrooms doubling as home offices, garages, boot rooms, you name it. They do it best, and it all starts with a free consultation. You can book that today. Learn more about their approach. Check out their different budget approaches. They've got different levels of extravagance, all of it guaranteed for life. You'll find it on their website, californiaclosets.ca. And our friends at Athabasca University want to remind you, if you're looking to better yourself this year, it could be learning more about something you're interested in. It could be setting yourself up for opportunities in the job market. It could be tapping into maybe an area of research that you find fascinating. Athabasca University has countless opportunities that lie in wait as Canada's open university. They've got world-class accredited online degrees and courses, so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. Your only commute is to your device. And 92% of their alumni say that they're in a job related to their field of study. There's not a lot of post-secondaries that can make that claim. Get started today by learning more about the AU Advantage by checking out athabascau.ca. All right, John. Of all the things Donald Trump has done to throw shade at Canada and cast doubt, cast aspersions on the relationship between Canada and the U.S., he did sign an executive order this week that I can actually get behind. Here it is.
Next, this is an executive order relating to the use of paper straws. As you've consistently identified, nobody really likes paper straws.
Number one trending. Can you believe it? A paper straw was number one trending for 3 days or something.
The environmental impact of plastic straws versus paper straws is entirely unclear. This has cost both the government and private industry an absolute ton of money and left consumers all over the country wildly dissatisfied with their straws. So we're asking aspects of the federal government, federal departments and agencies to look at their existing procurement processes, and we're asking your Domestic Policy Council to look holistically at this issue to address it, and it really is something that affects ordinary Americans in their everyday lives.
We're going back to plastic straws. These things don't work. I've had them many times, and on occasion they break, they explode. If something's hot, they don't last very long, like a matter of minutes, sometimes a matter of seconds. It's a ridiculous situation. So we're going back to plastic straws. I think it's okay.
Just wait. Here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. He's signing the order, and here it comes.
And I don't think that plastic's going to affect a shark very much as they're munching their way through the ocean.
Okay. Now, I don't want to take lightly plastic pollution in the ocean, but can you get on
But
board
you are.
with going back to plastic straws? Can we all agree that paper straws are the biggest disaster?
Well, first of all, we're not going back to he's not banning paper straws. So, I mean, he's just opening the gates to, he's digging, he's drilling, he's adding more plastic to our ocean. Great. But I'm not going to applaud this. This is I think it's the most trivial thing ever. If you're like, my straw bothers me. You know what bothers me? 1% of the plastic in the ocean is microplastics from straws. And you might think, 1% is not a lot. There's a lot of fucking plastic in the ocean. 1% is a shitload. I could ask ChatGPT right now, but I don't want to give ChatGPT as a reference. I know that, the most plastic in the ocean, about 15%, and about another 12%. So a lot is single-use bottles, food wrappers, and stuff like that. That's what I think we should solve first. But at the same time, I'm not going to applaud this. I don't want to add more plastic to our ocean. Just so what? So, I'd rather put something in a disposable or a non-disposable bottle, or there's ways to fix this.
You can still do that. That's the good news.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You can still take your personal steps to benefit the environment. There's nothing wrong with...
Which is what I think everyone should do.
By the way, there's nothing wrong with referencing ChatGPT as long as you disclose you're referencing ChatGPT,
well, it's good
which is
with
exactly
math,
what I'm doing right
sure,
now.
yeah.
So I asked ChatGPT as we speak. This was not a planned bit. I asked, do plastic straws contribute to plastic pollution in the ocean, and how much? Says the coagulator, plastic straws do contribute to plastic pollution in the ocean, but the overall impact is relatively small compared to other sources of plastic waste. A study from 7 years ago, so take it with a grain of salt, in 2018, estimated that plastic straws make up 0.025 of the total plastic in the ocean. In terms of marine debris, a widely cited estimate suggests straws account for about 4% of plastic weight by piece count. In other words, here's a straw, here's a bag, here's a wrapper, but far less by weight. They say the most significant sources of plastic pollution in the